They ordered a female veteran to remove her shirt, then saw the tattoo no one dared speak about. The moment the officer ordered her to remove her shirt, a heavy silence fell over the crowded room. No one expected the faded tattoo revealed beneath, an intricate emblem worn by few, spoken of by none. It was a mark that told a story of battles fought in shadows, of sacrifices unseen, and of strength quietly carried through years of silence. This was not just a woman breaking rules. She was a veteran of an elite force, humble, resilient, and bearing a history few dared to acknowledge. What happened next would shatter assumptions and ignite a wave of respect that had long been overdue. When those gathered finally understood the weight behind the tattoo, the legacy it represented, they were forced into stunned silence. And before I forget, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories reach. And if you're new here, consider subscribing to our channel so you don't miss tomorrow's special video. I guarantee you won't want to miss it. Now let's jump in. The line outside the Benton County DMV stretched around the block by 7:40 a.m. It was one of those mornings when the air sat still and cold, the kind that made breath visible and conversations quieter. A slow drizzle clung to the windows. Fluorescent lights flickered behind security glass, and beneath a crooked sign that read, "License Renewal, Veterans Line Available." No one seemed to move faster for anyone, veteran or not. She stood near the back of the line. Loose jeans, steel-toed boots dulled with time, a charcoal gray long-sleeve tee tucked into a heavy utility belt. Her flannel overshirt was tied at the waist, slightly damp. Her auburn hair, streaked with gray, was tied back in a low, neat bun. She didn't speak, didn't fidget, just stood, still, like the kind of stillness you only learn when silence was once life or death. Most people barely glanced at her. Some saw a mechanic, others a woman past her prime, trying to get through a long morning. No one noticed her left hand had the calloused precision of someone who once disarmed tripwires. No one noticed the worn patch sewn into the corner of her back pocket, a faded SEAL team insignia barely visible under years of wash and sun. The clerk inside didn't look up when he waved the next few people forward. A younger man behind her sighed. "Been here forever," he muttered. She gave him a small nod, the kind that says, "Yeah, but we wait anyway." He didn't recognize her. Few ever did. When her turn finally came, the staffer barely met her eyes. "What do you need?" "License renewal, with veteran status added." The man motioned her to the back desk. That's when it started. Another clerk, thinner, louder, with a plastic badge that said temporary staff, Collins, looked up with annoyance as she approached. "You the one for the vet status check?" he said, voice echoing. She nodded. "Proof of service?" he asked. She handed over a worn manila folder. Inside, discharge papers, commendation letters, and a single black-and-white photograph of a unit standing in front of a C-17, their faces blurred by the wind, eyes squinting against the sun. Collins barely looked. "Don't see a DD-214 in here. You got it on you. It's on the next page." He flipped it. Still didn't read. Just frowned. "Sorry, ma'am. You'll need a secondary form of ID and visible verification of service-related tattoos or physical markers. State policy." She blinked, slow. "Excuse me." He leaned back in his chair. "If you can't verify it with additional documentation, I'll need to confirm any military tattoos. Especially since you're claiming elite unit status. We've had people lie before." His voice wasn't cruel, just careless. Like a man who'd never known the sound of a teammate's last breath. "Remove your outer layer. We'll make a note if it checks out." The room had gone quiet. She looked up slowly, calm, controlled, and said nothing. But in that moment, something shifted. The silence stretched. A few people looked up from their phones. The woman behind the front desk stiffened slightly, sensing the tension. Even the young man from earlier, the one who'd sighed about the wait, leaned forward just a little. Collins tapped his pen against the desk, trying to reassert control. "Ma'am, I don't want to make this difficult, but if you want the designation, you'll need to comply. That, or come back another day with full documentation." He said it with the tone of someone convinced he held authority over her life. She didn't move. Instead, She slowly unlooped the flannel from her waist, folded it, and placed it neatly on the counter. Then, with steady hands, she reached behind her neck and pulled the long-sleeve shirt over her head in one clean motion. The room wasn't prepared for what it saw. Her back bore no ordinary tattoo. It spanned her shoulder blades, inked in deep, weathered black, the unmistakable wings and anchor of the Naval Special Warfare insignia. But there was more. Intertwined in the lines were names, dates, coordinates, symbols so specific and clean, only those who'd served would even understand their weight. But what silenced the room wasn't the tattoo itself. It was the scar that curved from her spine to her lower ribs, jagged, pale, and surgical. The kind left behind after emergency medevac. The kind no civilian should carry. The kind no one ever speaks about, especially not in places like this. She stood still, facing away from them, her breathing steady. The air was colder now. One of the older men waiting in line lowered his phone. He stared, eyes wide. He didn't say a word, just pressed his lips together and slowly gave a single, respectful nod. Collins cleared his throat, now clearly unsure. Okay, I think that'll suffice, he muttered, reaching to stamp the paperwork. But his hand hesitated. Wait, came another voice. It belonged to a woman in uniform, a state trooper who had entered the room just moments before, unnoticed. She stepped forward. Her voice was quiet but firm. I know that tattoo. Collins looked at her, confused. The trooper didn't break eye contact with the woman. SEAL Team 4. Yemen. Fall of '03. You were one of the medics on Extraction Red Hill. Still, the woman said nothing. She simply pulled the shirt back over her shoulders, calm as before. The trooper exhaled, a whisper of reverence in her tone. I thought you were dead. Behind them, someone whispered, Who is she? Collins stepped back, his earlier posture gone. The woman picked up her flannel and draped it over her arm. You don't have to process my form, she said quietly, without bitterness. I'll come back another day. But as she turned to leave, the trooper spoke again, this time louder. No, you've earned this. And suddenly, everyone in that room knew. They hadn't just asked the wrong question. They had awakened a history they weren't ready to carry. Outside the DMV, the rain had slowed to a mist. She walked with a calm, measured pace, not fast, not slow, just purposeful. The shirt clung slightly to her skin, the wet fabric darkening the outline of her back. She didn't look back. She never did. Not when it stung. Not when it passed. The name on her license was Eleanor Graves. Most just called her Ellie. To the DMV, she was a number in a queue. To her neighbors, she was the quiet woman who fixed tractors and occasionally mowed the front lawn at the community center. She lived alone on the edge of town, in a small ranch-style house that backed up against the hills. To those who served during the Red Hill extraction, she was something else entirely. Inside the DMV, the trooper was still standing, frozen in a mix of disbelief and awe. Her name was Officer Karen Blake, a former military police sergeant turned state law enforcement. She remembered the Red Hill incident with painful clarity. 5 SEALs had been pinned behind a collapsed building after an ambush in rural Yemen. Ellie Graves had gone in, not once, but 3 times, under fire, pulling them out one by one. She wasn't supposed to make it back. I read your name in a memorial report, Karen whispered to herself. Collins said nothing. His face was pale now. I didn't know. Karen turned on him. That's the point. People like her don't walk around wearing medals. They just carry the weight. Out in the parking lot, Ellie moved toward an old, rusted pickup truck. The kind with mismatched paint on the tailgate and a duffel bag in the passenger seat. Her license plates were plain. No decals. No flags. The only mark was a tiny, sun-bleached bumper sticker that read NSDR. A phrase known only to those in her world. No SEAL team rescued. As she started the engine, a flash of memory broke through the drizzle. Sand. Screams. Blood on her hands. The last man she carried from Red Hill, Lieutenant Marco Delaney, had bled out 5 feet from the evac chopper. She remembered his grip on her wrist. The way he'd whispered, "Don't let them forget us." But they had. That's what happens when you live quiet. When you don't talk about your past. When your scars are real, but your papers are buried in bureaucracy. Back inside, Officer Karen had stepped behind the counter. I'll finish processing her paperwork, she told the staffer. Why? Karen paused, then said it aloud, the name that had long become myth in certain corners of the community. Because she's Valkyrie. A silence fell again, this time heavier. Not a nickname, a call sign, a ghost story among elite units. The medic who walked through fire and never raised her voice. The one who always came back with the wounded, or never came back at all. Out in the parking lot, Eleanor Graves drove away, and Benton County had no idea that they had just dismissed a legend. Eleanor pulled off the road just past the edge of town, onto a gravel shoulder beside a quiet ridge where the pines grew thick. She shut off the engine and sat still, the ticking sound of the old truck's engine cooling the only noise. This wasn't a place with meaning, not like a memorial or graveyard. It was just somewhere no one would find her for a while, somewhere she could breathe. She reached over to the glove box and opened it. Inside, a folded map with hand-drawn notations, a multi-tool worn thin, and a tin Altoids case, not filled with mints, but with a compact trauma kit she hadn't touched in years. Beneath that, wrapped in waxed canvas, were a few relics she'd never found the heart to discard. Dog tags, scuffed. One set was hers. The other, worn and snapped halfway through, belonged to Lieutenant Delaney. She held them both for a moment, thumb grazing the etching. That name had stayed with her through recovery, through surgeries, through a medical discharge that came without ceremony. The military never liked loose ends, and women like her, women who returned alive when others didn't, made for complicated files. She could still hear his last words in her ears. You walk like a ghost, Graves. Maybe that's what keeps you alive. She hadn't even known what he meant then. She did now. There were no photos of her in unit scrapbooks. No plaques with her name. Just scattered mentions in after-action reports and encrypted comms logs, buried beneath clearance levels and black ink. But those who'd been there, they remembered. Some whispered stories. Others, like Karen Blake, had memorized them. Ellie placed the tags back in the glove box, slow and careful. Then she stared out through the windshield, rain trailing down the glass like slow-moving veins. In town, the rumor would already be growing. Some would say it wasn't true, that the DMV woman couldn't be that Valkyrie. Others would remember details, stitch together timelines, and grow quiet. But Ellie didn't care about that. She hadn't come here to be remembered. She came here because her father had died last year, and someone needed to tend the land he left behind. She came here because people needed their trucks fixed and their fences mended. And because somewhere along the line, a quiet life had become more honorable than the medals left in a drawer. A knock on the driver's side window startled her. It was Karen. No lights. No sirens. Just her patrol car parked behind. Ellie rolled the window down. Karen held out an envelope, the completed paperwork from the DMV, already stamped, sealed, and marked Veteran Verified. Didn't want you to have to go back, she said softly. Ellie took it without a word. Their eyes met. Two soldiers in different uniforms, connected by something beyond protocol. Karen hesitated, then asked, You still carry the tattoo? Ellie gave a small nod. Karen smiled faintly. Good. Some things deserve to be seen. Karen didn't stay long. She gave Ellie a look of quiet respect, the kind only another service member could give, and turned back to her patrol car. No small talk. No awkward questions. Just understanding. Ellie waited until the engine faded into the distance before opening the envelope. Inside was her renewed driver's license, crisp, fresh, and stamped with the veteran designation in clean black letters at the bottom. She traced her finger across it, then placed it in her wallet without ceremony. She didn't need the label. But Lieutenant Delaney had once told her that visibility mattered, that people needed to see what quiet service looked like. Still, it felt strange. She started the truck again and drove the long road toward home, tires crunching on gravel, rain sliding in sheets down the windshield. Her house sat beyond a wooden cattle gate at the end of Hollow Bend Road. A hand-painted sign beside the mailbox read GRAVS Auto and Farm Repairs. People didn't ask what the letters stood for. They just called her when the diesel pumps gave out, or when a tractor starter refused to turn over during winter frost. It wasn't just her work that kept them coming back. It was her silence, her stillness, her precision. There was something about Ellie that made people instinctively trust her, even when they didn't know why. She backed the truck up beside the barn, killed the engine, and stepped out. Her boots landed with a soft thud on the dirt. She moved toward the workshop, swinging open the doors and revealing a space cleaner than most clinics. Tools hung in exact rows on pegboards, wrenches organized by size, lubricants and parts boxed and labeled with near-military discipline. In the corner, a framed roster of SEAL Team 4 leaned behind a welding mask, the only photograph she'd ever allowed herself to keep in the open. The names were typed, some crossed out in black ink. Delaney, Cutter, Reyes, Lee, Simmons, Graves, all there, all marked by time. She ran her hand across the top of the frame, then moved toward the workbench. A radio crackled faintly in the background, the community channel. Static, then voices. Something about a mechanical failure out at one of the dairy farms near Milton Hollow. Generator failure. Emergency backup down. Cattle feed system stalled. Ellie wiped her hands on a rag and picked up her keys. Another job. Another quiet fix. Another day to disappear into the work that kept her moving forward. But as she walked out of the barn, something made her pause. Out near the road, a black SUV had pulled onto the shoulder, idling with its headlights dimmed. It didn't belong to anyone in town. And Ellie Graves, former Valkyrie of SEAL Team 4, knew without a shadow of a doubt. That wasn't an accident. The SUV didn't move. It sat there like a question mark on the shoulder of Hollow Bend Road, quiet and still, just far enough to pretend it wasn't watching, but close enough that Ellie knew it was. She stood in the barn doorway, the soft wind pressing against her flannel shirt, watching. Its windows were tinted too dark for town ordnance. Its plates were government black, and the idle hum of the engine was steady, low, precise, probably hybrid. Not a local vehicle, not even close. She didn't reach for a weapon. She didn't tense. She just waited. Whoever was inside had already seen her. No use pretending otherwise. After nearly a minute, the driver's door opened. A man stepped out, tall, lean, wearing a dark jacket over a pressed shirt and slacks. Civilian clothes, but everything about him moved like he hadn't forgotten training. The way he scanned the surroundings, the way he stood with his feet shoulder-width apart, the slight tilt of his head, as if anticipating angles of approach. He was alone. That told her something. "Ms. Graves?" he called out, his voice polite but firm. She didn't answer. He took a few steps forward. Not rushed. Respectful. "I didn't come to bother you. I was asked to deliver something. That's all." Still, she said nothing. Finally, he reached into his coat slowly, open palm, cautious, and pulled out a thick envelope. No markings on it. No insignias. But from the way he held it, she recognized what it was. Top clearance courier delivery. No trail. He placed it gently on the edge of her mailbox, then backed away. "I was told not to stay. Just deliver and leave." She raised one eyebrow. "Who told you?" The man paused. His expression shifted. "A name I was told not to say out loud." Ellie crossed the distance between them with 3 silent steps. Close enough to read the detail in his eyes. That's when she saw it. Not fear, but reverence. Like he already knew who she was. Like he'd heard the stories. She took the envelope. He nodded once. "For what it's worth, ma'am, my brother was in Red Hill. He didn't make it. But I was told you stayed with him until the end." Ellie's voice was quiet. "What was his name?" "Derek Shore." Her breath caught, just slightly. She remembered the name. Remembered holding his hand as the medevac circled too far and too late. "I carried his unit patch in my medkit," she said. "For 3 days." The man's eyes grew wet, but he didn't let a tear fall. "Thank you," he whispered. Then he turned, got back into the SUV, and drove off without looking back. Ellie stood there in the road as the sound of the tires faded. She looked down at the envelope, fingers tightening around it. No return address. Just her name. Not Eleanor. Not Miss Graves. Just one word, typed in bold, all caps. Valkyrie. Back in the barn, the rain began again. Gentle, steady, as if the world were holding its breath. Ellie set the envelope down on the workbench, next to an open socket wrench set and an unfinished carburetor. She stared at it for a moment, unsure if opening it would pull her back into something she'd sworn she left behind. Then, with practiced hands, she peeled it open. No creases, no ceremony. Inside were three things: a satellite photo, a folded letter, and an old photograph, one she hadn't seen in 20 years. She picked up the photo first. It was grainy but recent. A remote compound tucked into the side of a ridge. Afghanistan. No, the trees were wrong. More likely Eastern Europe. The timestamp read 2 weeks ago, and in the lower corner was a red mark. A heat signature. She didn't recognize the compound, but she recognized the pattern, the layout of cover, the placement of guards. Whoever sent this didn't just want her to look. They wanted her to understand. She opened the letter next. It wasn't long. 2 paragraphs, typed. Valkyrie, one of ours has resurfaced. Off books. Held against her will. Confirmed ID, Lieutenant Anna Rivas. Unit, Ghost Team Echo. She's alive. We can't send anyone officially. But we knew if anyone could see what others couldn't, it'd be you. The map's enclosed. Burn this after reading. And, Ellie, you were never supposed to fade. We need your eyes again. K. Ellie sat down slowly, the letter trembling slightly in her hand. Anna Rivas. She hadn't heard that name since the fall of Mosul. Anna was one of the few she trusted without hesitation. A comms officer who once held a perimeter for 6 hours when a convoy failed to extract them on time. They had shared rations, stories, a tent in the cold. And silence. So much silence. Ellie had assumed she was dead. Everyone had. She turned the last item over. The photograph. It was old, sun-faded. 6 women in fatigues, dusty and smiling in front of a grounded Black Hawk. Arms around each other, laughing despite the storm clouds overhead. Ellie was second from the right, younger then, eyes harder than they are now. Anna stood in the middle. Back then, they had all called her Echo. Ellie pressed her palm to the picture and closed her eyes. They had all made promises once. If one of us goes dark, the rest don't forget. Most forgot. Tom does that. But Ellie didn't. She stood up, walked to the far side of the barn, and unlocked the cabinet she hadn't opened in 10 years. Inside, her old duffel, a sealed medkit, tactical boots, and a soft, folded cloth, gray, heavy, her team jacket, the one with her call sign stitched inside the collar. Valkyrie. She placed the letter in the burned barrel, lit a match, and watched it turn to ash. Then she turned off the light and stepped out into the storm. By dawn, the barn was locked, the truck cleaned out, and the animals fed for what might be the last time in a while. Ellie had left no note. Just a single envelope taped to the inside of the door with instructions for her neighbor, Mr. Kincaid, a retired mechanic with a bad knee and a better heart. It simply read, "Feed twice daily. Diesel tanks full. Take the eggs. Keep the rest. Back soon. Maybe." Then she walked into the house one last time. The living room was neat, not spotless, but lived in with quiet dignity. A few photos lined the mantel. Her father at his wedding, her niece in graduation robes, a worn group shot of volunteers from the local VFW handing out meals after a flood. Nothing of her past. Not visibly. But behind the bookshelf, tucked in a hollow wall panel, lay a sealed lockbox. She opened it. Inside was a battered field journal. Coordinates. Names written in code. A single burner phone with only 3 numbers programmed. She powered it on. All 3 contacts showed the same status. Inactive. Except one. Keegan. A moment of hesitation, then a long press. 1 ring. 2. A click. Took you long enough. The voice was dry, grizzled, but unmistakable. Sergeant Major Keegan Arlo. Once her commanding officer. Now presumed dead or retired, depending on who you asked. "I got your letter," Ellie said. "I figured. You packed yet?" "I don't even know where I'm going." "Doesn't matter," Keegan replied. "If you've seen the satellite image, then you already know what they're trying to do." "Extraction?" "No, not this time." His tone sharpened. "This isn't a mission, Valkyrie. It's a message. They took Anna because she knows what we buried. And they're betting no one left alive remembers." There was a pause. Then Keegan added, But I remember. And I know you never forget. Ellie said nothing for a while. Then, what's the fallback? I'll send you a location. Northern entry. Minimal heat signature. 2 days. Someone will meet you with gear. No unit, no backup. Just you. And if I don't come, I won't ask again. Click. The call ended. She stared at the screen as it went dark. There was no fear. Just the slow return of the rhythm. The pulse that only comes when the past stops pretending it's buried. When every movement means something again. When ghosts stop whispering and start walking with you. By the time the sun broke over the ridge, she was gone. The only sign she'd ever been there was a small indentation in the barn's dust floor where her boots had once stood, and a fading set of tire tracks disappearing down the back road, toward the old freight line and the waiting drop point. No fanfare, no flag raising, no crowd to salute. Just a veteran, quietly returning to where the fight had never really ended. The freight yard at Silver Junction hadn't seen real traffic in years. Rust clung to the rails like moss. Signal lights blinked on empty tracks with no trains to guide. A chain-link fence, half collapsed, let in stray dogs and wandering coyotes more than freight. And at the far end, just beneath the remains of a rusted-out water tower, sat an abandoned switching shack, the kind no one would bother checking, unless they knew where to look. Ellie arrived just after 6 o'clock. She parked the truck under a collapsed trestle bridge, double-checked the perimeter, and moved on foot. Her steps were light, deliberate. She didn't crouch, didn't sprint, just melted between cover like the earth itself had trained her. Inside the shack, the air was musty. Dust filtered through cracks in the roof like fine powder. In one corner, a duffel bag waited on a splintered crate, nondescript black canvas, tagged with the initials VG in red thread. No note, no welcome, just gear. Ellie opened it. Inside, a sidearm, holstered and clean, a compact suppressor, a roll of encrypted maps, reinforced tactical boots, a low-profile Kevlar vest, her old combat knife, the same she'd left in a forward-base locker 15 years ago. She held it for a moment, thumb tracing the engraving on the hilt. Do no harm, but take no chances. There was one more thing in the bag. A folded cloth, dark gray. She unwrapped it and held it up. Her jacket, the same one from Yemen, from Red Hill, from the night they'd said she died. The stitching on the inside collar was intact. Valkyrie, e.g., NSWF. Her fingers trembled just slightly. It was like being handed your shadow after living in sunlight for too long. She slipped it on. The fabric clung to her like it remembered. Then the wind shifted outside. She heard a car. Low engine. Tires crunching gravel, slow and deliberate. Ellie moved to the edge of the shack and peeked out. A black sedan, newer, unmarked, pulled up near the fence line. The driver's door opened. A figure stepped out. Older man, limp in his left leg. His silhouette unmistakable. Keegan. He hadn't changed much. Gray stubble. Faded scar on his jaw. Eyes that still looked for exits in every room. Ellie stepped out into the light. He looked at her. A long moment passed between them. 2 statues carved by the same war. Didn't think you'd actually show, he said finally. I almost didn't, she replied. Keegan cracked half a smile. But you did. Because you always do. She tilted her head slightly. You have intel? He nodded, walking toward the shack, his limp more pronounced than before. She's alive. Still in the compound. High probability they're trying to extract data from her. Maybe memories, maybe access codes. Either way, we don't have time. Window closes in 72 hours. And the others? No one else is coming. Ellie said nothing. She didn't flinch, didn't sigh, just reached back into the bag, pulled the knife from its sheath, and clipped it to her belt. Then we don't waste time, she said quietly. Keegan's voice softened. You're not her anymore, you know. Ellie met his eyes. That's the problem, she whispered. I never stopped being her. They drove in silence. Keegan's sedan cut through the morning fog like a blade. Engine quiet, tires hugging the back roads with precision. The town had long disappeared behind them, replaced by pine forest and broken fencing, open land stitched together by old utility poles and forgotten trails. Ellie sat in the passenger seat, her jacket zipped halfway, fingers tracing the edge of the map on her lap. The lines were coded, visual reference only, no GPS. Every mark reminded her of missions long buried beneath redacted reports. Still memorize everything before you move? Keegan asked, glancing over. She didn't answer. She just nodded once, folding the map with practiced hands and slipping it into the inside pocket of her jacket. You were always better than the rest of us at that, he added. Didn't need drones or tech. You just saw it. Ellie kept her gaze forward. That's why they called me Valkyrie. Keegan chuckled. Nah, they called you Valkyrie because you never left a body behind. His voice fell quiet. Not even when you were ordered to. A silence settled between them. Finally, Ellie spoke. Anna wasn't on any recent rosters. How did they know she was alive? Keegan's jaw tightened. Intercepted message. Russian origin, through a proxy server in Belarus. Someone used a burned satellite channel linked to Operation Echo. Ellie turned to him sharply. That protocol was shut down a decade ago. That's what we thought, Keegan replied. But if Anna still remembers access patterns, encrypted drop sites, even fragments of passwords, that kind of intel still holds value, especially to the wrong hands. Ellie's expression darkened. And no one sent a team? Keegan shook his head. They sent contractors. 2. They vanished. Because this isn't a job for guns for hire, she muttered. No, it's a job for someone who still knows how to disappear. They drove another mile in silence. Then Keegan reached into the glove box and pulled out a thin manila folder. He passed it to her. Inside, thermal images, movement charts, and a single surveillance still, grainy, time-stamped, but unmistakable. Anna, tied to a chair in a dim room. Eyes swollen, but alive. She was staring straight into the camera. Ellie ran her fingers over the image. Her jaw clenched. She looks like she knew we'd see this. She did, Keegan said. She knew the protocol. She knew who we'd send. They reached the end of the road, literally. A rusted barricade marked the transition between civilian roads and deep timber country. Beyond it lay 40 miles of wilderness and one thin path to the ridge where the compound sat tucked into shadow. Keegan parked. This is as far as I go, he said quietly. They've got drones, heat readers, vibration traps. You go in alone. Ellie opened the door, wind pressing cold against her skin. I never needed a team, she said. Keegan hesitated. No, but they always needed you. She looked at him. Softly, but with steel. That's why I'm going. Then she walked into the trees, like a ghost returning to war. The forest swallowed Ellie as she moved deeper, her boots barely disturbing the thick carpet of pine needles and damp leaves. The air was heavy with the scent of earth and moss, a quiet contrast to the violence that had shaped her past. The canopy above filtered the sunlight into fragmented beams, dappling the forest floor with fleeting patches of light and shadow. Every step was deliberate, every breath measured, trained over years of silent patrols and high-stakes operations. Her senses sharpened. The faint, rhythmic hum of distant generators, the low murmur of muffled voices, and the subtle crack of a twig snapping a few yards ahead. The compound was close now, hidden just beyond a thick curtain of trees and underbrush. She crouched behind a moss-covered boulder, pulling out the encrypted maps. The perimeter was well fortified, sensors spaced with deadly precision, patrol routes looping every 15 minutes, and surveillance cameras with glowing night vision lenses silently blinking in the growing dusk. No drones hovered overhead yet, but she knew that was only a matter of time. Her fingers traced the lines on the map, each marking a threat, a blind spot, a chance for entry. The entire layout screamed of careful preparation. This wasn't a makeshift holding cell, but a fortress designed to keep secrets buried and prisoners silent. In the stillness, a memory flickered. Anna, laughing through exhaustion, passing her a cigarette wrapped in foil, whispering, "We'll make it out. We have to." It was a promise and a plea, and Ellie clung to it like a lifeline. Moving with the grace of a shadow, Ellie skirted the tree-line, keeping to the darkest patches. Her eyes caught a faint glint of metal near the dirt. A nearly invisible tripwire stretched across the path. A ghost of her old life smiled quietly at the trap. "Still the same," she whispered. She knelt carefully, producing a thin wire cutter from her vest. With meticulous precision born from years of disarming deadly devices, she severed the wire and disabled the trap without triggering the alarm. Each step closer heightened her awareness. The sounds of the compound, distant footsteps, the low murmur of voices, the occasional barked order, filled the air. She scanned the imposing compound walls, tall fences topped with razor wire, watchtowers manned by guards clad in black tactical gear. They moved with practiced vigilance, eyes sharp but unaware of the storm silently creeping through the trees toward them. Her comm crackled softly. "Value copy?" She tapped twice in reply. "Go," came Keegan's voice, low and steady. "Patience," he reminded. "Extraction depends on timing and silence. No mistakes." She swallowed hard, adrenaline mixing with calm resolve. "Understood." Ellie slipped beneath the fence, landing lightly on the other side. The cold concrete of the compound floor replaced the soft earth beneath her boots. Harsh floodlights illuminated parts of the yard, casting long shadows and highlighting clusters of guards moving in patrol patterns. Her heartbeat steadied. This was no longer just a mission, it was a rescue. A retrieval of a ghost from the past who refused to be forgotten. Slow, controlled breaths filled the space between the distant gunfire drills and the whir of security systems. Every moment stretched, every shadow held a secret. Ellie moved with purpose, silent as a whisper, the weight of her past wrapped like armor around her. She was here for Anna, and she was going to bring her home. Inside the compound, the cold hum of fluorescent lights echoed down sterile corridors lined with cold metal and concrete. The distant, mechanical clatter of boots echoed faintly, mixing with the soft drone of machinery, a relentless reminder that this was no place for mercy. Ellie moved like a ghost, weaving through shadows cast by crates and scattered equipment. Each step was precise, silent, a dancer's grace born of years navigating hostile terrain. Her breath was slow, controlled, muscles taut but ready to spring. Ahead, behind a reinforced door with small barred windows, she caught sight of the figure she'd come for. Anna, slumped in the corner, bound and bruised. Anna's silhouette told a story of resilience and pain. Her eyes, swollen from sleepless nights and muted suffering, flickered with a light of recognition as they met Ellie's. "Anna," Ellie whispered, voice low but urgent. Anna lifted her head slowly, voice hoarse but steady. "Ellie? You came." Ellie nodded, crouching closer. "We're getting you out." Anna managed a weak smile that held 1,000 unspoken words. Behind them, the echo of approaching footsteps warned of incoming patrols. Tom was slipping away. Ellie pressed her ear to the door, counting the footsteps. 2 guards, circling near, but not close enough yet to overhear. She reached into her vest and pulled out a compact lockpick kit, fingers moving with surgical precision. Years of field experience had honed her touch, quiet, efficient, practiced. Each click of the lock was a nail in the coffin of their captivity. Click. The heavy door creaked open with agonizing slowness. Anna rose, leaning heavily on Ellie's shoulder. Her strength was waning, but her spirit was unbroken. "We don't have long," Ellie said, voice steady, scanning their exit route. Together, they slipped into the maze of hallways and fenced yards, moving as shadows themselves. Every faint noise felt amplified, a distant cough, a shuffle of boots, the low murmur of guards exchanging words. The compound seemed alive, watching, waiting. Suddenly, a piercing beam of light swept across their path. Ellie froze, pulling Anna behind a stack of crates just as 2 guards rounded the corner, radios crackling. The guards' voices were sharp, their movements deliberate. Ellie's eyes scanned rapidly, then spotted a ventilation shaft low to the ground, just within reach. Without hesitation, she grabbed Anna and slipped into the narrow opening. The duct was tight, dust thick and choking in the stale air. Crawling through the metal tunnel, they moved slowly but urgently, every scrape and shift a calculated risk. The guards shouted, their footsteps pounding closer, but the narrow vent shielded Ellie and Anna from sight and sound. At the vent's exit, Ellie peeked out cautiously. The path was clear. They emerged into the darkness of the forest beyond the compound's perimeter. The night swallowed them immediately, branches and underbrush concealing their escape. Anna gasped, her voice trembling. "You came for me." Ellie's gaze hardened with quiet resolve. "We're not done yet." In the shadows, their breath mingled with the night air, two warriors bound by unbreakable loyalty, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The forest enveloped them like an ancient sentinel, dark and thick with whispered secrets. Ellie and Anna moved with practiced stealth, navigating the tangle of roots, fallen leaves, and shadows that danced beneath the moonlight. The night air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth, the kind of smell that clings to skin after days spent in silence and solitude. Anna's breathing was shallow but steady, a fragile rhythm that spoke of both pain and determination. Ellie reached into her pack and pulled out a small water pouch, pressing it gently into Anna's trembling hands. "Hold on," Ellie said softly, her voice a low promise. "We're almost clear." The narrow trail they followed opened onto a dirt road, where a nondescript pickup truck waited in the shadows, its engine silent, its paint dull and unremarkable. No flashing lights, no markings, just a reliable vehicle and a driver whose eyes bore the same weight of unspoken history Ellie carried. That driver was Marcus, former teammate, survivalist, and one of the few people Ellie trusted without hesitation. He slid quietly out of the driver's seat, his movements deliberate and cautious. Without exchanging words, Marcus offered a curt nod and helped Anna into the passenger seat. Ellie climbed in beside him, glancing into the dark tree line as the truck rumbled to life. The headlights remained off, swallowed by the night, as they crept forward on the dirt road. "Any sign of pursuit?" Ellie asked, her tone clipped but calm. Marcus shook his head. "Not yet, but they're fast. They'll be watching every road out of here." Ellie's mind began its relentless calculation: routes, extraction points, safe houses, timelines. Each variable layered with risk and hope. Her fingers brushed the collar of her jacket, grazing the tattoo hidden beneath the fabric, a faded emblem inked long ago, worn like a secret shield. It was the tattoo no one dared speak about, a mark of silent endurance and unsung valor. She had carried it through years of battles, loss, and quiet survival. It was a story written not in medals or ceremonies, but in scars and whispered respect. "Once we get Anna somewhere safe," Ellie said, her voice steady but tinged with the weight of the fight ahead, "we start planning the next move." Marcus glanced at her, his eyes sharp. "This isn't just about rescuing one woman." Ellie nodded. "No, it's about exposing what they're trying to bury, stopping whatever they're hiding." Outside, the forest seemed to lean in, listening to the vow carried by two warriors bound by loyalty and unbreakable resolve. The pickup vanished into the night, wheels stirring dirt and memories alike. A quiet exodus marked by determination, honor, and the relentless courage of those who fight without recognition. They arrived at the safe house just before dawn, a small, unassuming cabin tucked away on the edge of a forgotten logging road. Towering fir trees surrounded the structure, their dense branches reaching skyward like silent sentinels guarding secrets long buried beneath layers of moss and fallen leaves. The morning air was cool and crisp, filled with the scent of pine sap and wood smoke lingering faintly from the night before. Inside, the cabin was sparse but functional. The wooden floorboards creaked underfoot, and the faint hum of an old refrigerator was the only background noise in the stillness. Ellie helped Anna inside, guiding her carefully. Anna's steps were tentative, each movement weighed down by exhaustion and lingering pain. Anna sank onto a worn couch near a small window, her body finally surrendering to the fatigue that had been held at bay for so long. Her hands trembled slightly as she lowered herself down, eyes heavy but alert. Ellie sat beside her, her gaze sweeping the room, a place stripped of distractions, a sanctuary for healing. "Rest," Ellie said softly, her voice a gentle command woven with concern. "You've earned it. You survived what most wouldn't." Anna nodded, her eyes fixed on the cracked window pane where the first golden rays of sunlight filtered through. Her voice was hoarse but steady. "How did you find me? After all this time?" Ellie's fingers unconsciously brushed the inside collar of her jacket, where a faded tattoo lay hidden beneath the fabric, a symbol known only to those who had walked the path before her. It was a mark of survival, of unspoken bonds, a quiet declaration of endurance. "Some ghosts don't stay buried," Ellie said with a faint smile, the weight of history lingering in her words. Memories flickered in the silence, missions cloaked in secrecy, the faces of fallen comrades, the nights spent waiting in the cold, knowing the cost of silence. Ellie's mind wandered to the night they lost Anna, the night the world had assumed she was gone forever. But here she was now, alive, breathing, needing her. The cabin's modest kitchen held a small pot of coffee, the aroma curling upward in delicate spirals, filling the room with a comforting warmth. Ellie poured 2 cups, handing one to Anna. The warmth seeped into her hands, grounding her in the moment. "Once you're ready," Ellie said softly, "we start unraveling the truth. They took you for a reason. It's bigger than any of us." Anna's eyes sharpened, the flicker of fire returning to their depths. "Then we finish what was started." The sun climbed higher, casting long, slanting shadows across the forest floor outside. Light and shadow danced in tandem, a reminder that even in the deepest darkness, hope finds a way to break through. Ellie settled back in her chair, watching Anna rest, but never forgetting the road ahead. The quiet fight was far from over. But for the first time in a long while, the weight of the past seemed lighter, carried not alone, but together. The safe house was quiet except for the low hum of a laptop and the occasional rustle of papers. Around the worn wooden table, Ellie, Anna, and Marcus gathered, each carrying the weight of years carved into their faces, eyes sharpened by battles both seen and unseen. The room's dim light cast long shadows, echoing the heaviness of the mission ahead. Ellie's fingers traced a complex route on the map pinned to the wall, a narrow path winding through rugged terrain toward the compound supply line. "This is our target," she said quietly but with unyielding clarity. "Cut their resources. Force them to shift their focus. Disrupt their operations. If we can sever their supply, we can buy time and create openings." Marcus nodded, his gaze steady. "Timing is everything. Move too soon, and they'll tighten security. Move too late, and Anna's already compromised. We need precision." Anna, pale but resilient, leaned forward, her voice firm despite the exhaustion etched into her features. "They took me because I knew critical intel, codes, locations, protocols. But I memorized backups, contingency plans. We have leverage. If we use it right, we can turn their weapons against them." Ellie's gaze met Anna's, pride, pain, and fierce determination all blended into one. "You kept the mission alive when they thought you were gone. Now it's time to finish it." Plans solidified with careful precision. Roles were assigned to each member of their quiet unit. Trusted contacts for extraction points, backup communications, and contingencies. Their preparation was meticulous, leaving no room for error. The faint hum of the laptop and the rustling of maps were the soundtrack to a mission honed by discipline and silent resolve. In the background, Ellie's tattoo, hidden beneath her jacket, seemed to pulse with unspoken strength, a symbol of the battles she carried on her skin and soul. It was more than ink. It was a promise of honor, a reminder of the weight of her past, and the promise of justice yet to come. The following days were a blur, gathering supplies in the dead of night, coordinating with old allies, running through simulations and contingency plans. Each step forward was measured, every decision filtered through years of experience and the deep desire to right the wrongs that had been done. On the final night before the operation, Ellie stepped outside into the cool night air. The breeze whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of pine and earth. She looked up, eyes tracing the stars scattered across the velvet sky, silent witnesses to countless battles fought in shadows and silence. There were no speeches, no fanfare, just the steady beat of resolve, the calm before the storm. Her breath came steady, controlled, the rhythm of a warrior preparing for one last fight. Behind her, the cabin was quiet, a sanctuary for healing and planning. Ahead lay uncertainty and danger. But Ellie was no stranger to the unknown. At first light, the team moved out, not as scattered souls or forgotten warriors, but as a unit reborn, forged by honor, resilience, and the unbreakable bonds of loyalty. Every step forward was driven by truth, justice, and the quiet strength of those who refused to give up, no matter the cost. The first light of dawn seeped slowly over the horizon, painting the rugged landscape in soft hues of gold and rose. The world seemed to hold its breath in that quiet moment, as if waiting for justice to finally unfold. Ellie, Anna, and Marcus moved with steady purpose, silent, precise, and resolute, as they approached the heart of the supply compound. The tension that had gripped them for so long now transformed into a focused calm. Years of pain, loss, and unspoken sacrifice throbbed beneath Ellie's skin like the tattoo hidden beneath her jacket, silent but ever present. But now, that weight felt lighter. It was the weight of something about to be set right. Inside the compound, the team worked swiftly. Ellie's hands moved with the confidence of a seasoned warrior, disabling security systems, severing communication lines, and planting evidence that would expose the corrupt network lurking beneath layers of lies and deception. Every move was calculated, deliberate. No chaos, no wasted energy. Just the quiet precision of those who had survived too much to be careless. Anna watched with growing strength. The woman once broken by captivity now carried a fire that burned brighter with every passing moment. Ellie caught her gaze, a flicker of hope and fierce resolve, and knew this mission was about more than survival. It was a reclamation of dignity and truth. Outside the compound gates, reinforcements quietly assembled. Not armed soldiers, but local community members, trusted allies, and journalists. Cameras clicked, lights flickered on, and whispers spread like wildfire. The truth was about to be dragged out of the shadows and forced into the harsh light of day. The guards inside, once brash and confident, now faltered, their weapons lowered, eyes scanning the crowd that had gathered beyond the gates, witnesses who would hold them accountable. As commanding officers arrived, Ellie stepped forward. For the first time in years, the tattoo beneath her jacket was revealed, a bold, faded emblem marking a legacy of sacrifice and strength. It was no longer hidden or dismissed. It was a symbol of honor. The lead officer approached, eyes meeting Ellie's with a respect that was both new and long overdue. His voice was quiet, sincere. No one here ever doubted your strength, only your silence. Ellie allowed herself a small, measured nod. It was a victory not of loud celebration, but of presence, of standing tall in truth and honor. Later, as the sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting the sky in a wash of deep reds and purples, Ellie and Anna sat side by side. The scars they bore, both seen and unseen, remained. But so did their unyielding strength. Anna reached over, placing a steady hand on Ellie's shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered. Ellie smiled softly, the weight of the past finally lifting. "We did this together." And as the night settled around them, the tattoo, the mark no one dared speak about, stood as a testament, not just to battles fought and lost, but to the quiet restoration of honor, dignity, and truth. Thank you for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and share your thoughts below. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Stay tuned for more immersive tactical stories.